The Norwegian Automotive Federation, NAF for short, staged its second electric vehicle range test just a few weeks ago. It tested 21 new EVs against each other by putting them all with a full charge and driving them until they died on the side of the road. Very different to what most journalists do, which is to actually stop driving it when the range says 0 and then drive it to a charger at that point, which doesn't give you a full indication of what true range actually is. Now, the goal of the test was to not only see the vehicle's actual real-world range, but to also see how accurate the claimed WLTP range was. Now, all 21 EVs were driven until they stopped completely and shut down to measure real-world range. Now, the testing was done without preheating the battery or the cabin. And all cars were driven on the same route, on the same day, with a similar style of driving and the same climate control settings on. Now, the route consisted of city driving, country roads, highway speeds of up to 110 kilometers an hour, and some mountain driving as well. Now, all cars had to cross at least one mountain pass. The cars with the longest range had to cross 2 additional mountain passes because some of them did triple the range of the shorter range cars. Now, the test focused on range consumption and rapid charge time. Guys, in addition to this test, well, the test was done by Norwegians, and it's all written in Norwegian. So I found it quite difficult to understand. So what I've done is I put all the information together. I've ranked all the cars based on a number of metrics. I've done a lot of Google searching to do this. I've ranked all the cars based on price, performance, battery efficiency, overall efficiency of the car, range, luxury, size of the car, boot size and internal space, whether or not it is an EV dedicated platform, and also whether or not it looks good. And obviously some of these areas are subjective and some of them are objective. But I tried to be as objective as I could possibly be. I agonized over objectivity. I agonized over the smallest details like the length of the car, interior dimensions, interior style. Everything was looked at in fine detail. Now, for this test, there were 21 vehicles. They included the Hyundai Kona, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, both the long-range all-wheel drive and the long-range rear-wheel drive, the Tesla Model 3, standard range and long range, the Volkswagen ID3 Pro S and the ID4, the Skoda Enyaq, the Polestar 2, the Audi e-tron GT, the Hyundai Ionix 5, the Xpeng G3, the BMW iX3, Mercedes-Benz EQA, Volvo XC40, Recharge, Citroen Ec4, the Opel Mokka E, Fiat 500, Honda E, and the Mazda Mx30. Now, before I get to showing you guys the full test, I'll point out that the testers really seemed impressed by the BMW iX3. Now, why were they impressed? Well, they were mostly impressed because of its far exceeding its WLTP claimed range. They were able to actually drive the car for 556.2 kilometers or 346 miles before it ground to a halt. And that is 20% more than the WLTP claim, or 106 kilometers and 66 miles more. Now, this was, in my opinion, the most interesting part of the test. Out of the total 21 vehicles tested, 18 exceeded their WLTP range. 18 exceeded it, including both Teslas, and only 3 vehicles didn't. Those vehicles were the Polestar 2, the Citroen Ec4, and the Xpeng G3. But they only fell short by 3, 5, and 12 kilometers respectively, or 1.9, 3.1, and 7.4 miles. So even these 3 provided really impressive results, considering the fact the WLTP test cycle is claimed by many journalists to provide optimistic results. You can see that results from EVs are actually generally repeatable in the real world, as long as you drive the car until it stops, basically. So the manufacturers appear to actually be telling the truth, and in fact, it's the journalists that are lying to you. And why is that? Well, obviously the reason is because the journalists are actually not driving them until they stop. Fair enough. The journalists don't want to have to put the car onto a flatbed truck and tow it away, or have a big battery there to recharge it, or whatever. But therefore, the journalists are essentially lying to you because they are kind of taking the easy way out and stopping before the car stops, in order so that they can just go and charge the car at the nearest closest electric charge point. But in doing so, they're actually giving you false numbers, because clearly if all 21 cars basically made the WLTP range and 18 of them far exceeded it, it means that they're telling us the truth, and WLTP is a standard we should consider as acceptable. Now, who was the winner on range? Well, the Tesla Model 3 was the overall winner. In fact, the Tesla Model 3 was the overall winner in a number of areas. Range was one of those. It managed a very impressive 655 kilometers of range, which is 407 miles. Next, in second place, was a Ford Mustang Mach-E long-range rear-wheel drive. Remember that Tesla was four-wheel drive. Four-wheel drive vehicles use more batteries, so that's made it even more impressive that it won the test. However, the Mustang Mach-E did the test. It did 618 kilometers, or 383.9 miles. That's about 27 kilometers, 17 miles less than the Tesla. Now, I should make it clear, the Tesla tested was the 2022 model, not the old model. The newer model has better range than the older model. So who were the winners of my overall test, where I compared all metrics to each other? Well, I'll tell you what the metrics were. Range, efficiency, charging speed, charges available. Now I'll tell you before I continue, I gave 1 point to all vehicles not Teslas for charging, and an additional point to Tesla vehicles because they have obviously a far superior charging network. Now that includes a range of factors, whether the chargers are actually working, are they available, cost, the number of chargers, etc., etc. Now, if you're in a country where you don't have access to a good Tesla charging network, that may be possible, then you can just delete that column for your own reference, for your own reasons, your own purposes, and then you can compare the cars on the other columns. Now, the next areas include size of the vehicle and boot size, price. Price was a very important factor, which I tried to weigh a little more heavily than the other factors. Performance, luxury, infotainment and interior, style and packaging of the vehicle, did it have a frunk, and whether or not it was rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. So, the overall winner of the test, including all of those metrics with a score. Now remember that the lowest the score, the better. That's how I ranked the test. The lower number, the better. The higher the number, the worse. The winner of the test overall was easily the Tesla Model 3 long range. In fact, it won by quite a wide margin, which was a bit of a shock. I didn't realize that this would happen. The price of the Tesla Model 3 long range was $54,250. It actually ranked 10th on price, but it actually ranked very highly in a number of other areas, including performance, where it was equal first with Audi at a time of 4.1 seconds, 0-60 miles an hour. And incredibly, it just blitzed the test. So Tesla really do seem to be still leading the game on EVs when it comes to their prices and specifications in Europe, which I find very interesting because obviously those prices and I believe specifications will both improve once Tesla's Gigafactory in Berlin opens. And of course, Tesla doesn't have to ship the vehicles halfway around the world and pay other taxes which won't apply to them when they are building and selling the cars within Europe. So the Tesla Model 3 had a total score of 36 points for first place. In second place was the Hyundai Ionix 5 with a total score of 39 points. So Tesla only beat the Ionix by 3 points. However, back in third place, quite a way back, was the Tesla Model 3 standard range, which got a score of 46 points. And then quite a way back from that was the Volkswagen ID3 Pro S, which got a score of 54 points. Now in fifth place was the Skoda Enyaq High Plus Suite, which scored 60 points. Very close to the Skoda was in sixth place Polestar 2 Volkswagen ID4 First Plus, Audi e-tron GT Quattro, Ford Mustang Mach-E rear-wheel drive, and the BMW iX3. Now I should state, the Mustang and the iX3 finished equal 9th place, whereas the preceding three vehicles finished equal 6th, as you can see on the chart here. Now in 11th place was the Ford Mustang Mach-E all-wheel drive, and in 12th place was the Hyundai Kona and the Mazda Mx30. 14th place was the Volkswagen ID3 First Plus, and in 15th place was both the Xpeng G3 and the Citroen Ec4, while in 17th place the Volvo XC40 Recharge, 18th Honda E, 19th Opel Mokka E, and in 20th, the Fiat 500e. Last place, well and truly in last place, was the pitiful Mercedes-Benz Eqa, which actually came almost last in almost every metric. I mean, its charging wasn't near last. Let's go through and have a look where the Mercedes-Benz Eqa fell down. Well, it fell down for one in range. Its range was 452 kilometers, which means it placed 14th on the test out of 21 vehicles. However, it was one of the most expensive vehicles at $58,300. So range to price was actually very low. Now you may be saying, sure, but it's an SUV. Guys, it is an SUV. It is the SUV with the smallest boot on the planet. Literally the smallest. Its interior size is very, very small. Its boot size is 340 litres, which is incredibly small when you look at, say, the Hyundai Ionix 5, which just looks like a large hatchback and has a boot size of 540 litres. It's 50% bigger boot. So you can see even the interior of the Eqa was also small. So it really fell down in that area. Well, where else did it fall down? Another area was performance. Out of 21 cars on test, being one of the more expensive cars, it came 17th in performance, 0 to 60, providing what I think is an unacceptable 0 to 60 mile time for a Mercedes-Benz, or frankly any family car, of 8.6 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. Now, to me, that speed is just unacceptable, because if you've got a car full of people and you filled that car with luggage, then it's going to be much slower than that, and it's going to mean that overtaking or simply pulling out into traffic, it could potentially be dangerous. So I think on that metric, this vehicle is just unacceptable, and I was really disappointed by that, to be honest. Now, another area where that vehicle fell down was that it was built on an ICE platform, so it's compromised. It has a transmission tunnel as well. In efficiency, it ranked 16th out of 21 cars. So all in all, really a bit of a disappointing effort from Mercedes. Now, what about a highlight? Guys, one of the highlights really was the Hyundai Ionix 5. Really, to me, this is, along with the Tesla Model 3 long range, the standout car. Both of these two, you could pick either of these two and you would have made a fantastic buying decision. Where did the Ionix 5 stand out, and what made it get second place? A very close second to the Tesla, I might add. Well, style was one of them. Obviously, style and practicality, vehicle shape and size came into this test, and that is one of the areas where the Ionix 5 really stood out. It's got fantastic interior space, fantastic boot size, it looks fantastic, and it's just a very practical shape all in all. Performance, it really excelled in performance. It has an 800-volt drivetrain, therefore enabling it to have the fastest charging speed of 350 kilowatts. In addition to that, it did the 0 to 60 mile test in a very impressive 5.2 seconds, obviously nowhere near as fast as the Tesla, but well and truly fast enough. 5.2 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour is excellent. And it's faster than most hot hatches on the market, even though it's actually much, much bigger. Now, one area that was a bit of a surprise to me was the Ionix 5's charging efficiency. It charged at 14.4 kilowatt hours per 100, and that was quite a lot lower than the range champion, which is the Hyundai Kona. The Kona charges at 12.1 kilowatt hour per 100, which is quite a big improvement in efficiency. Now, one possible explanation for that could be the tyre differences. The Ionix has 235mm wide tyres front and rear, and it's all-wheel drive as well, whereas the Kona is front-wheel drive and has 215s. So you can see that tyre width and being all-wheel drive does make a difference to efficiency. Therefore, it's probably of significant note that the so-called Citroen Ec4 cross vehicle had by far the narrowest tyres on test, and I think the width of the tyres is actually dangerous in wet driving conditions with 195s front and rear. It's supposed to be an SUV of sorts, crossover type vehicle. If you took this thing on gravel with 195mm wide tyres, you could be in trouble. So in snow, you have no hope. And the fact they're selling this car in Europe with clearly summer tyres, to make efficiency summer tyres, is not a good move. It didn't actually do that well in efficiency, even with those skinny tyres on. It was not bad. It was sort of middle of the pack. But that was one of the disappointments of the test in comparison to the incredible results of overall the Ionix 5. Now, what about third place? Well, third place, Tesla Model 3 standard range. Where did the Tesla Model 3 standard range stand out? Well, honestly, it didn't really stand out all that well in any one key area. I mean, its performance is good. Obviously, all Tesla vehicles are. It does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5.3 seconds. That's good. Its charging is good. It came equal third for charging with a 250 kilowatt charging capacity. Obviously, it has a good charging network, and it has a 425 litre boot, which was decent compared to some of the other cars. One area that both Teslas excelled on, but particularly this model, the standard range, was price. It cost $42,000. So it was the fourth cheapest car out of the 21 cars on test. However, even though it was the fourth cheapest, it actually had quite a decent range for the price. It did 454 kilometers in the test. Now, if we compare it to other similarly priced cars in the test, you have the Xpeng G3, which actually costs more, $1,200 US more than the Tesla Model 3 standard range, but the range was a little bit shorter. In addition to that, the Tesla had a bigger boot. Now, what about the ID3? Well, the ID3 came in fourth place, doing very well with an overall score of 54 points. Now, on test, there were two different ID3s. One of them didn't do so well. The Volkswagen ID3 First Plus actually came in 14th on the test with a bit of a disappointing score of 72 overall points. However, the Volkswagen ID3 Pro S came in fourth place with 54 points. So it did much, much better than its brother. Now, where did the ID3 Pro where did it score well, enabling it to get in at fourth place? Well, it did well in a couple of key areas, including range. It did a range of 532 kilometers, which was about 50 kilometers more than its claimed range, which was excellent. It comes in at an affordable price of $48,800, which was surprisingly actually quite a bit more expensive than the base model Tesla. But that put it in 8th place for price. Its 0 to 60 time was reasonable at 7.3 seconds, though really slightly disappointing for an EV. I think they should be a bit faster because it's one of the features of many EVs that are obviously electric motors can be much quicker than petrol cars. Where else did it do well? Well, in luxury infotainment and interior presentation, came in at place. And in style and packaging, it also came in place. Now, although it's not the most stylish vehicle, it's quite a practical shape. Small bonnet and a hatchback style means that it really takes full advantage of its interior space. One other big key benefit of the ID3 is it's a dedicated EV platform. So Volkswagen is able to take full advantage of that fact, build the car up around the battery pack, the skateboard, and really make sure there's no transmission tunnel or anything else like that. Now, what about some other standouts? Well, last place in terms of overall range was the Mazda Mx30. In spite of, like I said, that was the cheapest car, so that's kind of fair enough. But one thing that really set back the Mx30 in this test was its bonnet and its overall style. The bonnet makes up almost half of the car. It's really quite illogical. And that's similar in a way to the e-tron GT Quattro. Both that car and the Mazda have kind of not very logical packaging. Also, that was a similar issue that I noticed with the BMW iX3. Those cars, the long bonnets, there's nothing to really go in there. You don't really need that long bonnet. Electric motors aren't that big. If you package the car smartly, you can make the bonnet much smaller. Look at something like the Cybertruck versus a traditional pickup truck, traditional ute. Obviously, it's kind of shortening that bonnet by more than half, which means you can take that size, that length, and put that into the cabin space. Make the cabin bigger, make the tray bigger, make the boot bigger. Now, guys, in 5th place was the Skoda Enyaq High Plus Suite, which scored 60 points. It did quite well, although it was only just in front of the Polestar 2 and the Volkswagen ID4 and the e-tron Quattro, which were only 1 point behind it. Now, where did the Enyaq succeed? Well, Skoda managed a range of 522 kilometers, which was 2 kilometers longer than its claimed range. Its efficiency was okay, sort of middle of the pack at 14.5 kilowatt hours per 100. Charging speed is okay at 125 kilowatt hours. Its boot size was excellent, 2nd place at 580 litres. Very good packaging there. And its performance was pretty good too, at 6.9 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour, or 0 to 100. One area that I noticed that the Skoda really shined in was its interior. What a fantastic job Skoda or VAG or whoever you want to say built this car, right? What a fantastic job they've done on the interior. It looks really, for the price of this car, they've really done an amazing job on executing not only a beautiful interior, but a very practically sized interior. I really like this Skoda, and it's a car that I would definitely consider if I was to buy an EV. Now, what were a few anomalies in the test? Well, one of the anomalies in the test was charging efficiency. Charging efficiency was excellent, like I said, in the Hyundai Kona and in both Teslas. It was also very good in the Fiat 500e, which came in, well, almost equal first with those other cars I just mentioned. Where was it bad? Battery efficiency was quite bad on the XC40 Recharge, which had the worst efficiency at 17.5 kilowatt hours per 100. And second worst was its kind of stablemate in a way, Polestar 2, which had an efficiency which was only 1 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers better at 16.6. Now, why might that have happened? Well, both of those cars clearly can drive very fast. Both of them can drive 0 to 60 in similar times, doing it in 4.7 and 4.9 seconds respectively. They did very well in the performance metric. They also had wider tyres than some of their competitors. The Polestar 2 had some of the widest tyres on test at 245s front and rear, and the XC40 Recharge had 235s on the rear and 255s on the front, which those things may have led to the reason why the efficiency was lower. However, they don't explain the full story, because some of the other cars, which also had much better efficiency, had wider tyres on them, such as the Model 3, which had 235s front and rear, and yet its efficiency was almost first on test, very close to the Hyundai Kona. Now, another anomaly was, as I mentioned, the Citroen Ec4 before, which had its very skinny 195 tyres on front and rear. But one problem I noticed with that vehicle was its performance. It did 0 to 60 miles an hour in 9.7 seconds, which is extraordinarily slow, and I really can't understand why it's so slow. Second only in pace to that car was the Opel Mokka E, which did it in 9.5 seconds. To me, those times are really just unacceptable in what is marketed as kind of a family car. Maybe not a family car, but I mean, they're both marketed as being 5-seat, medium or small size SUVs that are really intended to take passengers. They're not marketed as some kind of small hatch, which you may not use that to carry around family members. I thought those times were just too slow for the vehicles, and in my mind, they severely damaged perception of those cars to the market. Now, they weren't cheap either. Both of them cost $41,000 each, about the same price as the Tesla Model 3 standard range. So I don't really see the value in either of those vehicles. So, congratulations to the top 5 in this test. They all did extremely well. Massive kudos to them. They are really ushering in the electrification movement into Europe and all over the world. Very important vehicles. And honestly, you can't go wrong if you buy any of these. The top 5 vehicles in this test, as you can see, really have performed well across a range of metrics, and they are all good cars. Remember, top 5, first place, Tesla Model 3 long range. Second place, Hyundai Ioniq 5. Third place, Tesla Model 3 standard range. Fourth place, Volkswagen ID3 Pro S. And fifth place, the Skoda Enyaq Hi+ Suite. My personal favorite car of this list, well, I love Teslas, but honestly, I actually think my personal favorite was the Hyundai Ioniq 5, and it's probably the one I would buy. Why? Well, I love the style of the car. I love its big practical boot, its big interior, and it doesn't look like it's trying to be an SUV. It's not trying to be a pretend SUV, which many of these are. They're kind of fake SUVs. And realistically, overall, it did so well in this test that I can see myself owning one day. Maybe I will. Guys, thanks for watching the test. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've gotten something out of it. Make sure you click on the link below if you want to see all the test metrics. If you want an explanation of any of them, I'll provide as much as I can information on the data sheet to show you how I've scored the vehicles, why I've scored them in that way, and how each of those columns actually kind of make sense so that you can If you want to compare the cars yourself, you can compare all these metrics yourself. You can remove one column and compare against one thing. I mean, if you just want to compare them on range, you can do so. Just on price, you can do so. Just on speed, you can do so. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you've got any questions for me, put them in the comments below and I'll do my best to find you an answer. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.